I'm recording right now. Teach me, Daddy.
Wow. Oh, welcome back.
Welcome back to episode 2 of What Do the Gays Think?
I can't believe it. It's been so long. It's been all of like.
It's been 5 minutes. We took a bathroom break.
Yes, and now we're gonna do this. So today's topic.
No, we have to introduce ourselves again.
Oh. Okay.
Oh my god. I'm Mac Lubeck. He, him pronouns. Gay cis man. Here we go. Yes, it's very important.
I'm Pat Fardella, and I am not gonna identify myself. I'm the option that says like does not want to answer.
Wow. Okay.
Because sometimes you don't want everyone to know.
Whatever. Why you gotta be so secretive?
Sometimes you want anonymity to feel safe. Sometimes it's not. You're not in a safe space.
You revealed your identity in the last episode. I'll bleep it out for the last episode. Say it's not revealed.
I don't care. It's all fluid anyway. It's all fluid anyway.
It's all fluid, kind of like.
My hair's thinning so much.
No.
No.
All right, what are we talking about?
Vaccines.
Vaccines.
Like I said before, but then you rudely told me to do the introduction.
We have to introduce ourselves. God, okay. Yes, go ahead.
Wait. Okay, so we've done the introduction. Great. Quick side note for anyone who all two of our listeners,
right,
who skipped over the first part of the first episode. I will give a brief summary of what this whole thing is.
Yes, tell me.
To remind everyone that this is just us gals, sitting around talking about topics that interest us or current event topics, and trying to suss out the truth of it all. And we are going to just present that to you in a LGBTQ oriented or life experience oriented way.
Hopefully. Great.
That was like a minute, I think. Great.
Yeah.
All right, and so now moving on.
Oh, I was gonna say, just so that everybody knows, we do not speak for the entirety of the LGBT community.
That's the actual disclaimer. Yeah.
That's our disclaimer. We don't actually speak for the entire LGBT community. However, we do think that our opinions are better than yours. So no.
Well, sometimes we do. Depends who I'm talking to.
Oh.
So today's topic is vaccines, but before we get there,
tell me.
I was wanting to know I have like one thing to talk about before that, but do you have anything to mention?
Well, I mean, we can keep it pretty topical in terms of like the kind of the theme of the episode, which is vaccines and why. I don't know exactly what your arguments are going to be. I'm assuming it's going to be pro-vaccine and not anti-vaccine.
Welcome to the anti-vaxxer corner. I'm your host,
Karen.
Patricia Anti-Vaxxer. Karen, here to tell you. No. All right, then. Yeah, sure. Give me your opinion on if I say the word vaccine, word association. What do you think of?
Anti-vaxxers. No.
I thought you were gonna say autism at first, and I was like,
autism? No, God.
That one.
Oh no! And vaccines turn people gay. That's what I believe. No.
Well, I mean, we're proof. I've been vaccinated. You've been vaccinated.
It's obvious. The proof is in the pudding. No, I was going to say, we're recording this episode on Sunday, October 25th. And according to the most recent COVID-19 case data, we are experiencing a very strong surge in cases. And I'm just like, the fuck?
Just like, why?
Why is this happening again for the third time? We get a third wave of cases. People just don't care anymore. I don't know what's happening.
So I assume you like them. Vaccines, I mean, not COVID cases.
I was like, what? Yes, I like vaccines. I think they're very important.
Okay, great. Well, I'm going to talk about some basic stuff, obviously. Immunity, and then we're going with vaccines. I'm going to give just an overview.
Herd immunity?
I will mention that. I will, and I won't be happy about it. Immunity, vaccines, and then I have so much information, but I'm going to reduce it to a very quick little thing. Then I'm going to end with the World Health Organization data about COVID.
Hell yeah. Tell me about some data.
And disclaimer, this data is from early October. It's not updated for now, but they give us data from early October, which is close enough, in my opinion, to kind of merit discussion. So first and foremost,
we love data here. I'm a data scientist. We love data.
I don't like analyzing it, but I love looking at it.
Oh, okay.
Like I love graphs.
I'm sorry that you can't be bothered to analyze data.
I don't know what a p-value is. No, I do. I'm not sure. I know what
penis value.
It's less than 0.5 for you, I think.
Roasted, gagged.
0.05. Sorry.
0.5. Jeez, it's very significant. That means you know what that means. All right, sorry. Go ahead.
Immunity. So immunity is just your body's way of being able to distinguish between you and not you. So your cells and cells or components of cells that don't belong to you.
You and not you.
It's called self and non-self. So your body recognizes all the self, all your stuff, and then recognizes non-self and knows how to distinguish between the two of them. So it doesn't start attacking your own cells.
How do I get rid of the straight cells in my body?
That's conversion therapy, I think. That's another topic.
Let me talk about. Let's. No, I'm not gonna talk about it. We can talk about that separately.
Yeah. So there, in general, two types of immunity. There's active and passive. And passive is just as the name describes. It doesn't last forever. Usually, when people talk about passive immunity, they think about the immunity you get from your mother in utero, because you and your mother share all the blood through the placenta and stuff like that. So all of her antibodies get inside of you, and that's how you get your initial source of immunity. So whatever your mom has this immunity for, you do, but it doesn't last very long after birth. That's why you get shots, obviously.
Is that why people are like, oh, natural birth is better than C-sections?
No.
Oh.
Because that's a different thing. So when you're in utero, you will get her antibodies. So you'll be fine that way. The whole C-section versus natural birth, at least from my point of view, is the idea that natural birth. Oh, this is gonna get so graphic. Natural birth, you go through your mom's, her business,
vagine,
her canal, and you get coated in all of that bacteria in there.
Mm-hmm.
So your biome, the stuff that covers your body, all the bacteria that covers your body and that's in your mouth and your gut, comes from your mother, basically. So when you go out to shoot,
when you shoot,
when you go out that route,
launched
you get
via
covered.
a cannon.
Just opens the valve and you just you get covered in that bacteria, and that's the bacteria you kind of want to be covered in, because that'll kind of colonize your body and repel other bacteria from colonizing your body. Through a C-section, however, you get introduced to your mother's skin microbiome and not her hoo-ha microbiome. So your microbiome is not going to be it's not going to be the same as if it was going through the birth canal. That's my perspective. There's probably other reasons why. Some, would say one is better than the other, but that's just the one that I've researched because I love that sort of microbiome.
Yeah, stuff. Well, your PhD is, I don't know exactly what it's in, but you work in microbiology, so I trust your opinions.
Thanks. I understand the tenets and the underlying sort of theories. Of course, mine isn't. I don't work with birth. So anyway, so your passive immunity is when you get from your mother. Great. You can also get passive immunity from blood transfusions. So if you, for example, people suffering from COVID, a treatment that people are exploring, are you getting the blood plasma from those who've recovered from it, because you'll be rich in the antibodies. Mm-hmm. You'll get the antibodies. It'll hopefully help reduce your viral load, because they'll bind to the cells that have the virus in it, and then your body, takes care of it the way it does. So that's passive immunity. Active immunity is called like humoral immunity. Basically, that's the one where your body's producing its own antibodies to fight infection.
What'd you call it? Humoral?
Yeah, humoral. I think that's just another way to describe antibody-related immunity.
Humorous.
It's very humorous.
It's very funny.
Because, if you don't have it, you're screwed.
You die. No.
In some cases, this is literally a life or death topic, which is why it infuriates me so much that some people are so against it.
Right.
So you get this obviously from interacting with viruses, bacteria. And if your body is strong enough to recognize it, generate antibodies, and fight off the infection, that's great. And your body has mechanisms to remember it. So the next time your cells are just kind of wandering around your body and run into it, it can quickly produce the antibody for it, and then you're fine. You get a little sick as opposed to a lot of sick.
Explain to someone who is not a microbiologist what is an antibody, because I do not know what that is.
Okay, so in your immune response, there's like a lot of different cells, a lot of different types of component. Like there's just so many systems that I don't even know all of them. I'm going to be honest, I'm not an expert here. But what I will say is that when it comes to antibodies, there are a few types of them. But in general, the antibody looks like a big Y.
Okay.
So the base of the Y is usually the same throughout every antibody. It's the same like kind of base structure. And then the arms are the antigen identifying one. So an antigen is anything like on a bacterium or on a virus, like a viral protein that it can recognize and then bind to and then label for your body to know, okay, this is messed up. You have to come here and get rid of it. So normally, like I said, the base of that Y antibody is always the same. And the arms are things that can change depending on what kind of bacterium or what kind of virus you are fighting.
So an antibody is basically like a flare signal. It's like, I detect danger.
It's like a tag. So like it runs through your body, it binds to whatever it's specific for, and then it lets your other cells know, okay, this cell has got something in it. And then usually, at least from what I remember, a larger cell will eat that cell basically and be like, okay, and then digests it, and it hopefully gets rid of whatever's inside of it.
Jeez, I didn't know we were bringing cannibalism into this too.
Well, listen, I'm pretty sure they're called phagocytes. So
they're called what? There's
phagocytes because it's phagocytosis if I'm not mistaken.
Phagocyte, right? Yeah.
PHAG.
PH, right? I'm sorry.
We don't use that word on this podcast.
No, of course not. No.
So another way to get active immunity, obviously, instead of running into the living form, the virulence is just a measure of how severe the thing is will cause disease. So something's like minorly virulent, it won't cause that much disease. If it's highly virulent, it'll cause a lot of disease. So instead of running into those things, you can get a vaccine. So the vaccine trains the body to produce the antibodies for whatever virus, bacteria, whatever you're trying to build immunity for without actually getting the person sick, which is great because no one really wants to get sick, obviously, which is why I don't understand why people do not want vaccines, because that just prevents you from getting sick. So but those are the two types of immunity. So obviously we're focusing on active immunity, antibody immunity, and specifically antibody immunity generated from vaccines. So there's a lot of vaccines, different types of them.
So wait, is this why people say like, oh, well, when you inject a vaccine into you, you're injecting the virus into you. You don't want that. And it's like, hello?
You're leading, the perfect segue into my next session.
Okay.
So like you said in our previous episode, it's good to try to have arguments for or against the topic, or like at least talk about both sides of it.
Right.
So this kind of relates to the I don't want to say anti-vaxxer side, but maybe the apprehensive vaxxer, the person that doesn't know if they should get vaccinated or not. So there are different types of vaccines.
The undecided vaxxer.
Yes, the undecided voter. Yes. So there are different types of vaccines. It's really broken kind of, I guess, yeah. So like I'll break it up into like two main groups. So it's I'm gonna say whole pieces of bacteria.
Did someone say whole?
Someone say whole. I'm just the whole, sir.
Oh.
So you have your full pieces of bacteria and or viruses that you could kind of inject into the body, or you just have components of them. So yeah, so for some vaccines you are getting viruses or bacteria,
right?
But there's the caveat that these have been made so they don't get you sick. So the first type of vaccine is called a live because it's living, although vaccines are, or viruses aren't living. Let's just make that known.
Okay.
I don't think they're living. But live attenuated, so attenuated just means weakened. Basically, they'll chemically take the bacterium or the virus, they'll weaken it so it can no longer be highly infectious or highly, let's say, detrimental to your body, shoot you full of it, and hopefully your body can recognize it quickly and generate antibodies for it. And then you have antibodies ready in case you run into the real version, the OG,
Right.
and comes in, trying to kill you basically. And hopefully you have the antibodies to protect yourself. So that's the first kind of.
So what about all the people that are like, oh, when I get the flu vaccine, sometimes I get the flu, or like they'll say they get symptoms.
Yeah.
What's happening there?
So it could be psychosomatic. I mean, it could just be them thinking they have it. But another thing is, so these are viruses. If they're even if they're weakened, they can still do something. So for the apprehensive vaccinator, the thing is, if you're immunocompromised, if your immune system kind of sucks already, if you get one of these live attenuated viruses, you can get sick from it. So there is a chance that you do get ill from the virus, especially if you're already weakened, because the virus still is quote unquote living. It's still trying to do its thing. It's just not as efficient as the original virus. So yeah, some people can get sick from it. Usually though, it is just a minor thing. It's like they get sick for maybe, I don't know, a few days, and then they have the immunity built up from it, and then they're good to go. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, I would, if it was a choice, I'd be like, yeah, of course, I'll get sick for 5 days minorly than the flu, which could literally kill you.
Yeah. So if you're already a immunocompromised person, it's probably better to get the weakened version anyway than to catch the actual thing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, obviously, if you have a history like in immune deficiency, like people with HIV, or if you have maybe your older immune system just kind of sucks to begin with, you should talk to your doctor about it. Obviously, they will weigh the pros and cons for you. I'm a big supporter of preventative medicine. Routine visits to make sure you are not getting sick or like your body isn't deteriorating on you. So talk to your doctor. Obviously. I'm not a doctor. Prep. Prep? What? Yeah, prep.
You said preventative.
Yeah, prep work.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, what I will say is that what I found is that people who make the live attenuated viruses or live attenuated bacterium as vaccines, those usually work better than the next group I'm going to talk about, which is the component-based vaccine. Mm-hmm. So the advantage is obviously you do get a better immune response, because I'm assuming it's because your body's fighting off something that looks more like the native bacterium or virus. The disadvantage, of course, is that there's a risk of you getting sick if you're immunocompromised. So the next big umbrella group is the component one, and that's literally they just take pieces of either a virus or bacterium and they just inject you with a piece of it.
Right. So it's not the full virus.
No, it's not. It's like a protein. It's like a polysaccharide, which is just like a sugar component. And hopefully your body can recognize that one, make antibodies for it. So then when your body comes into contact with the real deal, it already has something that can recognize a part of it. Because the thing that happens with viruses specifically, it will infect a cell, and then it will generate proteins because the virus shell is a protein shell. And then you get these kind of protuberances. Protuberances? What's that word?
What?
Protuberant? It protrudes out. These proteins protrudes out of the cell. And that's
I don't know what that word means.
The viral proteins start to poke out of the cell. Okay. And that's the kind of protein that your antibody can actually recognize. So if you train the immune system with those proteins, when those proteins start to flare up in an actual infection, the antibodies will be specific. And the advantage here is obviously it's not a full virus. So there's not a chance of you actually getting sick from it. The disadvantage is the main disadvantage is that it's not the best to train your body this way. Your immune response usually isn't that high. Like the antibody count, I'm assuming, isn't as high. So you need regular booster shots for it. Which is
Okay.
something common with vaccines anyway. Even some attenuated vaccines, you still need boosters for because your body just doesn't create enough immunity for it the first time around.
Right, like the tetanus shot, right?
Yeah, so yeah, there are all those shots that have to be taken regularly to help you maintain your immunity because immunity doesn't last forever, even though we'd love it to. Really, like especially if things start to change. Like the reason why we always need a new flu shot is because the flu virus um, just changes so often. The protein coat that it's encapsulated in will change form, and then your antibodies that you had last year just can't. They're like, I don't know what it is anymore. It could be anything.
Right,
It could be.
right. Could be a rock, is that what you said?
And then I think the last one, kind of separate from these two groups that I liked, it's called like a. There's a couple names for it, but I'll just say it's like a DNA vaccine. So they inject you with something. Usually it's a weakened virus, like some other weak virus, like the cold or something.
Right.
They've made this virus such that it will infect you, and it's the DNA inside of it will have a protein. It'll make a protein for the actual virus that you want protection against. And they've made this virus non-infectious, so it doesn't actually get you sick. It's just hanging out there, making the protein for the other virus, so your body can recognize it, and then it eventually is recognized by your body and and removed.
That's interesting.
So it's a way to kind of engineer a virus to produce another virus's components to train your immune system that way. It's it's not super popular. I'm going to give you that. I think a lot of people are uncomfortable getting a virus in their body that's working to make another virus protein. And then there's the whole idea of like a transgenic kind of thing. Like, what if the DNA does something else in your body and it like ruins you? I don't know.
Oh God.
Like there's a lot of discussion about how you can influence the genetics of a human being. So that's one of the main kind of arguments. However, they have looked at these kind of vaccines for things like Zika, the avian flu. Mm-hmm. So it's stuff they actually they do readily study these, and it's actually a much shorter. Because I'm going to go into the time frame of vaccines. The studies for these to generate them is a lot shorter than the standard way of doing it.
Right, yeah, and I definitely wanted to ask you about how long this generally takes, because obviously that's topical in terms of COVID-19 specifically.
Yeah.
So what do you have to say about that?
Well, first I want to just quickly, right before I get to that topic.
Okay.
There is one other thing about vaccines that I know some people don't like. Some people have allergic reactions to them most of the time because inside a vaccine is egg protein. So when they make the vaccine, they're like growing the virus or whatever, growing the bacterium, they usually grow it in a media or like some sort of like nutrient substance that has albumin or like egg protein in it. It's like egg whites. So if you're allergic to egg whites, you can't get certain vaccines that are made with them.
Right.
So that's the only caveat that I want to give people. Like if you're going to get the vaccine, just make sure you're not allergic, because you do get like a very localized sort of inflamed response. And if you're highly allergic, who knows what could happen?
Right.
Because the effectiveness of vaccines decreases if you're already ill, if you're already having some sort of response in your body. So you don't want that ruining your chances of getting your immunity out of it.
So basically, if you're allergic to egg whites, then you can be an anti-vaxxer and nobody will care, right?
So you have your card. You're like, I can't. I'm sorry. No, they have other ways of getting the vaccines. Like they grow them up in different things, so you don't have to worry about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't. This is very common. But there are a ton of stuff that goes in a vaccine itself, the vial. All of it's fine. You don't have to trust me, but I've looked it up. I could go through them, but it's kind of like they're all fine. Like they're trace amounts of things that won't affect you. There's the virus or bacterium that we all know isn't gonna give you the super bad adverse reaction. As long as you're not allergic to egg white, you'll be fine.
Right. So I've got two questions then, real quick, and maybe you'll get to this in a little bit. I don't know if I'm jumping the gun here, but So when it comes to, you mentioned the time frame, when it comes to creating these vaccines and testing them, um, what are the cases in which, like, a vaccine testing doesn't go well or something? Like, I don't, people keep saying, like, and I keep hearing these politicians saying, oh, I won't get a vaccine if Trump says to take it and it's not tested properly. Like,
Right. Right. Okay. So yeah. So I will move on to the whole time frame kind of thing, because that's the next bit anyway.
right.
So the World Health Organization has this lovely PowerPoint PDF basically that was a summary of like early October, and it goes over the kind of time frame for this sort of stuff. Um, so generally, when you talk about vaccines, you're talking about like a 10-year cycle.
10
That is
years?
not because I don't want people like it takes 10 years to make a vaccine. No, it takes 10 years to get it to generate one itself, and then to test it, and then even to distribute it. So it's a 10-year full thing before you're like basically done, at making sure it's like effective, making sure you distribute enough of it. You're already in. I'll get to the phases, but you're already in a phase 4 testing, which is actually post-marketing surveillance, where you actually surveil what happens to people after they get it. So it's 10 years, the whole thing.
Right.
Like 10 years, you've got the vaccine, you've distributed it, and now you're seeing like, has our immunity maintained? Do we have to like redo some things? But when it comes to people, yeah, yeah. I mean, Trump mentioned Johnson and Johnson, and he mentioned Pfizer and another company, of how they're all readily, very quickly making this vaccine. And even the World Health Organization has said for COVID, there is this very compressed uh, production time frame.
Time problem.
So still 10 years, but things are now happening concurrently that would normally happen sequentially. So I guess I'll just go through the phases of the actual development.
Yes, tell
So
me.
preclinical is all animal stuff. So they have some testing vaccines. They're just giving it to animals, or seeing what happens. And then the the problem is only 7% of those actually work. So in the first step, only 7% get out the door. That's just because they have no idea what's going to work. But
Right.
7 the preclinical studies are effective and move forward. And then there are 4 phases of clinical trials after that. Basically, the difference is each phase is more and more people. So the first phase is volunteers that are healthy adults.
Mm-hmm.
And it's usually small amounts of people. I don't really know the exact numbers, but I'm guessing within the hundreds. And then if that goes well, it moves forward to phase 2. That is for people who are going to be the primary market of the vaccine when it's first made. So anyone who's at risk of whatever disease it is. So for our COVID case, it would be old people or immunocompromised people. They would be the first ones to get it. So that's phase 2. They'll get it, they'll see if it's effective, and then they'll move on to phase 3, which is then you have thousands on thousands of people getting billions and
billions and billions and
and then you have a bunch of people taking the vaccine. Obviously, it's monitored in phase 4, which is, like I said before, post-marketing surveillance. And that's when the studies continue, but it's after it's been distributed. So now they just, basically check in to see if there's any long-term effects, if it's effective long-term, or if anything bad happens. And then there's this other thing that I found out, which not many people do, unsurprisingly. It's called human challenger studies. So these studies are where they give you the vaccine, and then they give you the disease right after to make sure
to see if it worked. Oh my god.
A lot of people don't do this because it's unethical.
Sounds unethical.
But I mean, that's the true test, though. It's you give someone the vaccine, you wait for them to develop immunity, and you can measure that by measuring their antibody amount. And then you disease, like you stab them, you cough in their face, you sneeze on them.
Cough on them.
And like I don't know the percentage of how people do or do not do this, but I know in the United States, I don't think it's done. I don't because it's not considered ethical practices. Do no harm means you can't infect people with viruses.
Just tell them to go to a Trump rally and they'll likely get it.
Yeah, just like get the vaccine, then just go congregate with everyone and you'll be fine. But thing is though, so I said 7% get out of clinical studies, the first step. Only 20% in the trial succeed. So of that 7%, only 20% of those actually succeed and become viable vaccines.
Right.
Which sucks because that's rough. Like that's really small amount of vaccines, especially when, I mean, you do have a lot of companies working on it, but it's not too many. I think I saw a list of about 10 different companies, at least with the World Health Organization list, that are actively working on viable vaccines. So it's not too many.
So in terms of COVID-19, are we currently in clinical trials? Are we in the pre-clinical trial?
So so everything's happening concurrently and not sequentially. So we're still in the first year. So within the first year, if I'm remembering the diagram correctly, I believe it's phases 1, 2, and maybe even part of phase 3 happen within the first year, 2 years. So depending on what company you're talking about, you could be in any of those phases, which is great because you want to get, phase 3 is super important. That's where we're distributing it to thousands of people. That's the one we kind of have to get to.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's phase 1 and 2, so it's going to be the small group of volunteers, and then obviously people that really need it, which are the older people, and then you'll get to 3, and then 4 would last the rest of that kind of 10-year timeline to make sure everything's a-okay.
Right, like the large-scale distribution of the vaccine. Yeah.
Right. So here we go. As of, because this is all October 2nd, so this is a bit early. There were 10 vaccines in phase 3, so we're already distributing it to a bunch of people for phase 3 trials, which is nice. I think I read somewhere that there was a Johnson & Johnson where they showed 800 people with strong immunity after being injected with the vaccine, which is great. But get back to this whole politicization of it, I don't know about all the other countries, obviously. We only live in this one. But it's become a highly political topic where you do have people saying, like, if Trump green lights this vaccine, but the science isn't out on it yet, I'm not taking it. Like, vaccines should not be a bipartisan issue. Right. Some stuff just shouldn't. Science shouldn't be.
Do you ever think Trump would greenlight a vaccine that has not been properly vetted and tested, by these companies doing their trials or anything?
I think he would get the public amped up thinking that it's ready when it's not. I think, Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer have pretty good reputations when it comes to this thing. As long as they're self-regulating how they operate the trial, then as long as they're doing it like with double blinds or with controls or with placebos, it should be fine. I think he's just. I don't think okay, let's be honest. I don't think the vaccine is going to be ready soon because he's kind of promising that it's just around the corner because he wants people to get amped up and vote for him.
It's rounding the corner.
He's going to be the president that solved the virus, who got the vaccine, yada yada yada. I don't think so because judging by the World Health Organization, which is what they were talking about, I mean, targeted distribution, mass distribution was targeted between years 2 and 3. Of the not the epidemic. Hopefully, it's not an epidemic in 2 or 3 years, but within 2 or 3 years of the virus becoming a big thing. So it's definitely not. It's definitely not going to be here before the fucking election.
Oh, so God. It's not going to be here in the next couple weeks, like Trump keeps saying.
No, I mean, I think he'd love it because he'd love to just drop it. Like, there it is.
There it is. Boom. Yeah. Mic drop saved everybody.
But the last thing I kind of want to mention was this. It's called the Solidarity vaccine trial they're doing. And I want to get this right, so I'm going to read it verbatim.
Oh, here we go. Okay. Sing to me.
So, yes, it's a coordinated, international, concurrent, randomized, controlled phase 3 trial of different vaccines.
Oh my God. Okay.
So that means that coordinated, like a bunch of countries are doing this. It's all phase 3, so there's thousands of participants. It's randomized. So not one country is getting more of the vaccine type than another country. because you know, who knows, with different kind of groups of immunity, but in a country might be different than groups of immunity in another country.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all happening with different vaccine candidates. So you're not just testing one or two, you're testing several. So it wants to enroll a total of 280,000 people from 470 different sites in 34 countries. So it's trying to do a lot. I mean, that's obviously not, if you look at the world's population, that is not, it's a drop in the bucket if you think about it. Because it is 280,000 to the whole population of the planet, it's nothing. But you got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
So, especially because they want to get this out as soon as possible. So they're going to evaluate all the different vaccines. They're trying to get it tested in places where COVID is rapidly spreading, because they want to go there where all the sick people are, obviously.
Right, here in America, basically.
Yeah, and then they just say, you know, there's a big international collaboration because they want to get this done on a global planetary scale. So they saying, though, with this trial, they'll have the interim results. So like, I'm guessing maybe midway, or like just very, very first discovery results at the end of January. So like,
so 2 weeks we're talking.
So they'll have a good idea by January.
I mean, if you think about it, 2 weeks could be like a couple months if you stretch it out a little bit. Like maybe you redefine a week to be like.
If I totally forgot what time meant, and I could just make it my own. But what was great, the last little thing that was great, was on this beautifully made PowerPoint that they had. They even talk about how the over politicization of this vaccine has become a problem in the U.S. Like they even were like, yeah, it's a problem, because then you have people, you know, obviously distrusting the government, and then of course the scientists by association about this vaccine. So I agree with what Kamala Harris said. If Dr. Fauci says it's fine, then I would, of course, I've signed up for a COVID vaccine trial thing. I don't think I'm going to get selected because I don't think I fit that criteria. But if I did, sure, I'd love it. Just shoot me up with a bunch of it. I don't care.
Shoot me up.
Yeah, I'd be sick.
So our consensus, I guess, on vaccines is that, well, okay. Our consensus one on the COVID vaccine, if it comes out and it's obviously approved by Dr. Fauci, obviously, in general, and it's passed like all these clinical trials, and it should be fine to take. Like, there's no reason for us to distrust.
No, I don't. I think you'll be completely fine. I mean, hopefully. You know, Trump has put some questionable people in some questionable positions of power. So, you know, I think if it's, you know, I obviously am a research scientist, so I agree with the consensus of the data. If the consensus of the data says you get immunity from this vaccine with no adverse side effects, great, then I'll take it. But I would love to see the first report or the paper published about it first, or the data published about it first, obviously. But no, if the scientific community, not the government as of right now, if the scientific community comes together and says we got it, it's good, it works, I will obviously. I won't be the first to get it. It'll go towards the older people and the frontline or first responder workers. But then after that, they can shove me full of needles.
Oh, because obviously it'll take a while to mass distribute, I guess.
Yes.
So like when a vaccine is green lighted, I guess, by the scientific community or whoever's making it, like what goes into mass producing that vaccine?
Yes. It's really, it depends who makes it, obviously, like what company got there first, or because there's not just one vaccine per disease or multiple kinds of vaccines you can get. And there should be, because if one doesn't work, you can always switch to the other one eventually. So I think for like one of the most recent vaccines was like the shingles vaccine, and there are two different types of them made by two different groups. So I think it really depends on whoever makes it and how they plan on distributing it. Now, if it's going to cost anything, that's the part I'm worried about. Because like the distribution, once you have a means of I'm assuming it's going to be a live attenuated virus because there's not too many of the component-based virus or vaccines. So I'm assuming it's live attenuated, so you have to grow it up and you have to produce it. But once you understand and have that method, it's pretty easy to kind of upscale it to get this thing mass produced. The problem is if it's going to cost anything, and that's going to be it's going to be like a battle with insurance companies, and because I know a lot of Democrats, most Democrats, I would say it should be free. Obviously, like it doesn't matter your health insurance. It doesn't matter if you have health insurance. You should just be able to receive this vaccine.
Yeah.
I don't know if Trump has said, or if the Republicans have said, at least the ones that side with him, how they're going to, because he's like, oh, the military will distribute it. Okay. I mean, that's a great use, I guess, for the military. But am I gonna is there a copay? Am I gonna have to put through my insurance? Is it just going to be a government sanctioned distribution? I don't know. I'm worried about, actually, because there are some people who, especially with the costs of some of these things, because of course the company that makes it wants to make money off of it. They put the time and effort in it.
Right. I mean, I'm assuming that most health insurance providers would cover that, but of course, our lovely Republican friends are trying to end Obamacare very soon, actually, very soon.
Yeah, with no plan on what they're going to do afterwards. No idea.
They keep saying they have this health plan, and we haven't had any information about it, like what is in it, how they plan to get it through Congress, which maybe they should be focusing on that instead of, I don't know, pushing Amy Coney Barrett through the Supreme Court. We're going back to the last episode real quick.
Just any chance I can have to drag her, I guess I will.
Well, I didn't really watch any of the hearings, so I don't really know a lot about her. I just know that her views are a little bit too on the right side, I think, for a Supreme Court position. Anyway, generally consensus about vaccines. I have one more question about vaccines. Yes. And this is just something I'm curious about, is why do we not have a vaccine for HIV?
Oh, okay. Fun stuff. All right, I'm not like I said before, I'm not an expert in this. Let me think. Because the way HIV works is that it ruins your immune system. So it's the human immunodeficiency virus. It works on T cells, I believe, and that's part of your immune response. And once you have a compromised immune system, it's hard to kind of, I mean, I guess if you could make the vaccine for the virus. No, I'm not going to talk out of my ass. I'm not going to. No, that's not what this is about. When you don't know something, you should admit you don't know it, and then you should go look it up.
Okay.
So I'm just going to say that it is a virus that does damage your immune system and makes you immunosuppressed, especially if it's highly active in your body, because sometimes it can kind of go to sleep, basically.
Right.
I'm going to assume, and then obviously everyone should investigate this thoroughly. I'm going to assume that if your virus is one that targets the immune system, it's probably going to be even harder to make a vaccine for it. Mm-hmm. Just my assumption. And given how difficult it is, I mean, yeah, because HIV has been around for decades and we still don't have a vaccine for it. I mean, whereas, we have COVID, who's only been around for a few months, and yet we're already in phase 3 trials of multiple vaccines. So there's got to be that extra bit of difficulty there. But there's always PrEP. I'm always a big supporter of PrEP. PrEP, and the other one, PrEP is the pre-prophylaxis. That's the one you take before you get it, and there's one you take after to kind of keep your viral load down, because they're antiviral, which, this connects back to COVID. Basically, the PrEP is a cocktail of a few different antivirals. And one of the antivirals, speaking of antivirals, one of the ones that I know Trump got it, I'm pretty sure it's called remdesivir.
Yeah, remdesivir or something like that.
Yeah, all the antivirals end in VIR, basically. So, but that's the kind of stuff you'd find in PrEP. It's just antiviral. Usually it's a mixture of them, because you don't want the vaccine to kind of get used to one and not. Oh, that's a whole other topic. God damn. No, I won't talk about antibiotic or antiviral resistance. I will save that for later. But
we have so many topics.
Vaccines good. Anti-vaxxers, you need to herd immunity quickly. Herd immunity. a lot of anti-vaxxers, I think, rely on that herd immunity.
Right.
Herd immunity is just when there's a significant portion of the population that's immune to whatever we're talking about. And that way you don't have to go out your way and vaccinate, because since everyone else around you is immune, they're not going to get it and give it to you. Problem with that is you can still technically get it, obviously, by chance alone. You could run into someone who also is not immune who gets it.
Mm-hmm.
And then herd immunity can deteriorate over time, because you're getting more and more people who don't take vaccines who then get the virus or get the illness or whatever. And the problem is, especially with viruses, they change so freaking often. And the more people who serve as a reservoir for the virus give it more opportunity to change. And once it changes significantly, all the people around you who are now immune no longer are immune, because you've become a petri dish of the virus. It's just changed, and then it runs rampant in a community, and it's the immoral, irresponsible thing to do to not vaccinate. And that's what I think about it. That's it. It's
That's
immoral
the
and
T.
irresponsible.
That's the way Sue sees it.
That's the way Sue sees it. Honestly, it's immoral and irresponsible. You should vaccinate, and if you want to argue it, fine. But I'm right and you're wrong.
Oh.
Wow, exciting.
Right. So I just think it's interesting, though, that like there are certain viruses, I guess, like HIV, for example, that, you know, we still don't even have a vaccine for. Maybe it's because it's a different type of virus, like you said, but people expect us to get a COVID vaccine within a year when there are some viruses that we don't have vaccines for. And it's like there's, you know, I think there's variables that you have to take into account, like how viruses are different from each other.
Oh, that was going to be a whole other thing. I went into, because there's just so much I want to tell people. It's so hard. Yeah, there are a multitude of types of viruses and how they behave. HIV in particular is very different how it behaves than other viruses. So you have to take that into account.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, and even I think COVID-19 is supposed to be a flu-like virus. And,
right. Yeah.
You know, even the flu, like we have to get a new vaccine every year because it mutates every year and it changes. So like this whole concept of herd immunity, I'm circling back to that.
Yeah,
like,
do it. I don't like it.
You're
Go ahead.
recklessly endangering people to go out and catch COVID-19 under the assumption that COVID-19 is not going to mutate. So all these people that are dying or going to the hospital are doing it for no reason, because you don't know if the virus is going to mutate. That's my thoughts on herd immunity.
Yeah, there we go. Love it. Wow. That's amazing.
That's the tea.
That's the tea, and that's it. I think. I mean, I could talk more about stuff, but I don't think I probably should.
No. I think we're at a good point here. The recording's at 50 minutes.
Oh, perfect. Great.
And that might be shorter depending on if we cut certain things out. But final thoughts?
Just get vaccinated. That's it. That's like, and make sure you're getting your information from a reputable, scientific, peer-reviewed, not redacted or not like taken off the market by, you know, reviewers who saw it and who thought it was garbage. Peer-reviewed, true publications, primary literature, and then you're fine.
Right. You know what? I actually have one more question for you. Speaking of research, just in general, God. Because remember that one research study that was like, oh, they found a correlation between vaccines and autism. Can you please like put that to bed and like tell us why that's not true?
Yeah. So first of all, I don't think there's a consensus in the scientific community about what even causes autism. Especially because there's such a gradient of how severe the cases are versus how minor the cases are. So I don't even think there's a consensus. Is it like a environmental factor? Is it a genetic thing? Is it congenital? I don't think there's a consensus.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to these people who are bringing up vaccines causing autism, so there was the one paper that I think everyone knows now is garbage. It did not have a very large sample size. It was not well peer reviewed. It was kind of just published and sent out into the void. And then people who wanted an excuse not to vaccinate latched onto it. Were like, look, the one document that supports my claim versus the 8 billion that don't support my claim. Like, because you were talking about this with the whole ballot box thing. Like, you have one incidence of ballots being thrown out, and that you think that discredits the whole mail-in voting thing. It doesn't. It's just one incidence. Like, if you had an overwhelming majority of vaccinations that cause autism, then I'd be like, whoa, but we got to look at this again.
Or like too big of a portion, right?
Like, if you have a statistically significant amount of people who are getting autism from vaccines, then yes, you need to go back and you got to relook at that shit. But right now, I mean, it's the data for it is so minuscule. Like, good science is all about disproving things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So can't actively disprove something when all the evidence supports the claim. I mean, you want to, because like an effective hypothesis is one that can be disproved. But when you have an overwhelming majority supporting it, that's just what you have to go with. Like, yes.
Obvious. That's a scientific method. We all learned about it.
Scientific method. My God.
Learned about it in high school.
It's his 6th grade SpongeBob.
The gays stand the scientific method, and we also stand vaccines. Get vaccinated. If a COVID vaccine does come out and it's approved by the scientist, obviously, then please get it. Obviously.
That's it.
And
that's a wrap.
That's a wrap. All right. Then that is the end of this. I am Matt Klubeck.
I am Pat.
I
still can't think of something. I really want like a cool sign off, but I can't think of anything.
Well, if this takes off, then you'll have a long time to think about it.
Yeah, I'll have to think about it.
Yeah, you'll have to think about it. All right, that's the that on that.
That's the that on that. Goodbye.
Peace out.